How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. With the current climax of 2021 and everything that's been going on, all the uncertainty in the world, it's absolutely shocking to me. The NBA decided to have an all-star game with everything that's been going on, the postponements and delays of certain games. A very unpopular opinion, a lot of players highly disagree there should be an all-star game. The league should honestly focus on rescheduling those games that needs to be played. But even if certain players have multiple all-star appearances, that doesn't guarantee them a spot in the Hall of Fame. Over the past years, there's been a bunch of players who's been multiple-time all-stars that's not even in the Hall of Fame yet. So let's not forget some of the former great players who's accomplished huge success in the NBA that doesn't get the recognition they deserve. We're gonna take a look at 5-time All-Stars, 6-time All-Stars, and even one 8-time All-Star that's not in the Hall of Fame. Starting with every 5-time retired All-Star not inducted in Springfield yet. Of course, one of the most controversial, Chris Webber. I can make an entire video on C-Web whether he deserves to make the Hall or not. Being retired for over a dozen years now, I do think he'll get in years later eventually when there are new faces in the committee. The old guys still hold a grudge against what happened in college. Despite the former #1 pick underachieving, might not have been clutch, but averaging over 20 points, nearly 10 rebounds, over 4 assists, can absolutely do it all in his prime, had all the qualities, can score on the post with the teardrop, the athleticism, the dunks in his Bolus and Kings days, even led the league in rebound one year, will occasionally knock down a couple threes. His Kings arguably cheated out of the NBA Finals. If Webber would have led his team to the title and won Finals MVP, we'd be praising him like how everybody praises Dirk in 2011. At the height of his powers in the early 2000s, C-Web made 5 All-NBA teams, first team in 01, even finished 4th for MVP that year, averaged 27 and 11. The only power forward clearly better was Duncan. Webber better than Dirk before 03, right there with Garnett until 02 as well. Of course, in the tough West, couldn't get past the better Shaq and Kobe in 01 and 02, the deepest team in the league in 03, before tearing his ACL in the playoffs, rooting his legacy, and the devastating moment the Kings franchise still hurts to this day. Injuries also cost him missing out on 20,000 points, 10,000 rebounds. Based on all his basketball accomplishments, I do believe Webber deserves to be in the Hall. Jin Shu, also 5-time All-Star, played in the 50s and 60s. The 6'2 guard had all his All-Star appearances with Detroit, a 5-year stretch of 19.7 points, 4.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 2 All-NBA teams, first team in 1960, but never finished top 5 in MVP voting, averaged 14.4 points for his career, finished with a losing record as head coach, not good enough to get in my books. Don O, who played throughout the 60s, 10 seasons, averaged over 20 twice, but in those seasons finished 38 and 42 overall, followed by 21 and 60. 5 consecutive All-Star stretch, 19.1 points those seasons, 2 with the Pistons, 3 with the Bullets, no All-NBA teams, I give it a no. Rudy LaRusso, who also played throughout the 60s, a role player under West and Baylor for the Lakers, averaged 15.6 points, 9.5 rebounds for his career, actually had his 2 best statistical seasons with the San Francisco Warriors in 68 and 69, 22 a game and over 20 before retiring at 31. The Ivy Leaguer out of Dartmouth appeared in one defensive second team because he never won a title, despite being close numerous times. 0-4 in the biggest stage, coming up short absolutely does not help his case. There's a reason why Elgin Baylor never gets mentioned amongst the greatest of all time after the top 10 list. Baylor's name never gets brought up until much later in many regards. Having 0 rings will never help LaRusso's case. Marcus Johnson, perhaps the most underrated small forward ever, averaged 20.7 rebounds, 52% shooting. The 5-time All-Star averaged over 25 a game in year 2. Could have put up better numbers, but sacrificed for the betterment of the team under Don Nelson's system. 6 seasons of putting up 20 plus because the Bucks moved to the Eastern Conference in 81. Had to go up against teams like Philly and Boston, way tougher competition than the West. Johnson was ahead of his time, capable of playing the point forward role. Legends like Scottie Pippen and LeBron James gets all the credit for revolutionizing the position because of the lack of longevity and a career-ending neck injury during the cursed Clippers 80s era. Johnson's career fell off quickly after, made 3 All-NBA teams including 1 first team, an NCAA champion with UCLA, becoming the first ever player to win the Wooden Award. It's an absolute double travesty. Marcus Johnson's not in the Hall of Fame. Johnson could have averaged as much as Dr. J or George Gervin, but sacrificed for his team. Still dunking at 64 years old, I do believe Johnson gets in the Hall sometime within the next 3 years. Tim Hardaway, always known for his killer crossover, the 5-time All-Star, made 5 total All-NBA teams, having a a similar career to Chris Webber in terms of overall production. Run TMZ made Chris Mullin and Mitt Richmond both made the Hall. Tim had 5 seasons scoring 20 plus, 2 of double-digit assists, a monster with the Warriors, best year in '97 at 20 points a game for a 61-win team, finished 4th in MVP that season, made first team over the likes of John Stockton and Gary Payton. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Basketball Reference has him at nearly 80% to make the Hall. His performance helped define the TMC style, way ahead of the league's time, also adapting to the physical grinded Miami pace and excelling in both systems should tell us a lot about how Hardaway can adapt and still dominate. Because of his racial remarks in 2007, he felt that cost his chances in the Hall. If he were to get nominated, cancel culture will be in full effect. His killer crossovers, I guarantee, will never be canceled though. Brad Daugherty, the 5-time All-Star, drafted first overall by the Cavs, played his entire career with the franchise, 8 seasons, averaged 19 points, 9.5 rebounds. The team never got over the hump because of MJ's Bulls. The 7-footer averaged 20 and 10 for 3 straight seasons. Terrific passer, also overshadowed in the era of dominant big men. His name never gets mentioned. Sadly, because of back problems, his career was cut short. Didn't play in the league after 28, announced his retirement 2 years later. I don't see enough for him to get in anytime soon. Chauncey Billups, the fact that the Detroit Pistons hasn't won a single playoff game in 13 years and counting should immediately get Mr. Big Shot to the Hall. The former Finals MVP controlled the entire tempo of the 04 Finals. Billups led the franchise to 6 straight conference finals appearances. The team didn't even win a single playoff game without him after. Think about that for a minute. He also led Denver to the conference finals at 33 years old, 7 straight conference finals as the starting point guard. His numbers might not be appealing, but a terrific defender, super clutch, great outside shooter, a big body for a point guard. 3 All-NBA teams, even finished 5th for MVP voting in '06, led his team to 64 wins, has a probability of over 84%. It's an absolute travesty Billups hasn't gotten in yet. Now on to the 6-time All-Stars. Amar'e Stoudemire last played in the 2016 season, now an assistant for the Nets. Prime stat was as electric as any power forward there was. An offensive monster, the perfect big to mesh with Nash in just his 3rd season. Averaged 26 and 9 as a 22-year-old, super explosive around the basket, would be an excellent 5 in today's league. Was considered a power forward in the slower pace era. Made 5 All-NBA teams including first team in '07, a top 10 player in his prime, but often had many knee injuries, banged up. His last amazing season, 28 years old, his first with the Knicks, brought excitement back to the Big Apple. Averaged over 25 and 8, was a serious MVP candidate before Melo came. As his all-around game was starting to flourish, his body broke down faster, similar to Blake Griffin. Amar'e won't get nominated right away, but he should get in a few years. Jermaine O'Neal, one of the most forgotten great power forwards in the 2000s. It was Duncan and Garnett, the 2 best power forwards. After Webber's injury, O'Neal and Nowitzki was a serious debate back in '04. Absolutely money from mid-range. J.O. played power forward in the slower era, would be a 5 in today's game. 6 straight All-Stars, excellent on D, averaged 20.5 points, 10 rebounds, 2.5 blocks from '02 to '07. His best stretch, even finished 3rd for MVP voting in 2004, led his Pacers to a league best 61 wins. Injuries slowed him down after '08, started to decline and slow down, transformed himself to a role player, a 13 and 7 guy after his prime, made multiple stops to end his career, retired in 2014. If it wasn't for Malice in the Palace, the Pacers might very well could have won the '05 title, and J.O. was the best player on that team because his prime didn't last long. And what happened in the fight on the court, I don't see Jermaine making the Hall because it will remind everyone of the incident, but Pacers fans and NBA diehards of the 2000s knows how great J.O. was. Personally, I would love to see J.O. in the Hall. Unfortunately, I doubt that will happen. Sean Kemp, who was amazing in his prime but didn't last long, the 6-time All-Star, 6-year peak, 18.5 points, 10.5 boards, the All-Star appearances consecutively, 3 All-NBA second teams, an insane athlete similar to the likes of Amar'e and Blake Griffin, but because of cocaine and drinking problems, Kemp picked up massive weight after he was traded from the Sonics. Not a positive image, a big name in the 90s due to his exciting play. I doubt he's done enough to fully get in, will be an afterthought for the years ahead. Lou Hudson, the 6-time All-Star and absolute bucket getter. Best 6-year stretch, 25.2 points, 50% shooting. The original Sweet Lou because of his beautiful looking jumper. Made 2nd team All-NBA in 1970. Former backcourt mate of Pete Maravich. Has a 48% chance at the Hall. Says Speedball Reference, right next to Sidney Moncrief, who got in because Hudson's team didn't win a lot, doesn't get the recognition. Average over 20 points for his career. Anybody averaging over 20, playing 13 seasons in the NBA should get in, especially shooting nearly 50% from the field as a 2 guard. Walter Davis, another 6-time All-Star, his best year, rookie season. Averaged over 24.6 rebounds, 11 seasons with the Suns franchise, finished 5th in MVP voting as a rookie, a terrific shooter, solid on D, Phoenix's all-time leading scorer. In 15 seasons, averaged 18.9 points. However, in the 80s, Davis dealt with cocaine addiction, affected his game. The whole Phoenix team found itself in the middle of a drug scandal. Davis ended up testifying against his teammates, remembered as a good NBA player, but that scandal combined with telling on his teammates, most of them probably will never forgive him for that. I don't see him getting in. Larry Costello, another 6-time All-Star, the 6'1" point guard, a star for the Syracuse Nationals in the 50s and 60s, won a title with the 67 Sixers, averaged a dozen points for his career. After retirement, was head coach of the Jabbar Bucks team, winning a title in 71. Playing in the early days and not providing big numbers, I can understand why he's not in the Hall. But after leading the Bucks to the title as head coach 3 years after he won as a player, combined with winning 430 of a possible 730 regular season games coach, when you factor in his 6 All-Star games as a player, 2 rings each as a player and coach, that should allow him to make the Hall. Sadly, Costello passed away in 2001 at age 70. Larry Fouts, 8-time All-Star, not in the Hall. You might think that's absurd for anybody in the modern era especially. All the other 8-time All-Stars as of early 2021, Rick Barry, Vince Carter, Steve Nash, and Dwight Howard amongst others. Yes, I know many of you know I dislike Howard, but he's easily a Hall of Famer. The 6'9" center Fouts was a low post force, made first team in 55, but sadly 0-5 in the NBA Finals, lost twice with the Pistons, one with Minneapolis, 2 with St. Louis, a painful way to be remembered. Despite averaging nearly 14 and 10, his name will forever be lost in the history books because he didn't win a title. One of the first great big men in the league, has a 94% probability, according to B-Ball Reference. Still to this day, the only 8-time All-Star to have retired for many years, never to get in the Hall. Fouts sadly passed away in 1984 at 56, might forever be the only 8-time All-Star to never get cherished in Springfield. At least he'll always be known for making the winning bucket in the lowest scoring game in NBA history, a 1918 win over the Lakers. Those were every NBA players who's been a 5-time, 6-time, and 1 8-time All-Star to not make the Hall of Fame as of yet. Jack Sigma recently got in. After decades since playing, he was a 7-time All-Star. Other multiple-time All-Stars, Louis Dampier, Mel Daniel, and Jimmy Jones made most of their appearance with the ABA. That's why I didn't count them. While Joe Johnson, not officially retired, a 7-time All-Star, might need to wait a few decades to know whether he makes it or not. Current players LaMarcus Aldridge, a quiet 7-time All-Star, Blake Griffin 6 times, those guys are borderline Hall of Famers in my book. Which one of these players do you think deserves to make the Hall? Let me know in the comments below. I talk NBA comparisons, amazing storylines, NBA history, current NBA, and anything basketball related that will interest you. So hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much again. I love all of you. See you next time.